Welcome to Checking In, a Lodging DEI chat. I am Oren Stewart, your studio host. We have a great episode in store for you tonight. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey! Yeah! Hey!
Once again, thank you for joining us here at Checking In. I'm Oren Stewart, your studio host. Now let's introduce our host of the show, Miranda and Leo. And how are you both?
Hi, great. How are you?
Doing well. Good to see you guys.
Hey, Oren, it's good to see you. Miranda, how's it going?
Going great. Happy first day of Pride Month.
Yes,
Right
indeed.
on.
It's
Indeed,
summer,
it is.
the summer is here.
It's,
All right.
Yes, indeed. You all have a great show.
thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So, Miranda, here we are. We've got a live show. We got live action tonight, huh?
I know. And I guarantee you one of my kids is going to come running in the room any minute. The dog's going to start barking. The doorbell's going to start ringing.
It won't happen. It'll be smooth sailing tonight. It'll all be good. It's gonna work out. Didn't you
Well,
give warnings to everyone though before we went live? Did you give warnings to the neighborhood and everybody?
everyone has been told. Well, everyone has been begged.
Everyone's been begged. Okay, that's right, because they might be watching. Would want them to think you told them, right?
Yes,
Now,
exactly.
now here's the thing. There's no racquetball tonight. That's why one of the reasons we were able to do the show tonight because we didn't have racquetball this week at all. And
Are you
so
having withdrawals?
I'm hurting. Yeah, let me tell you a quick story. Then we'll get to this. So when I left the folks at the Northeast Regional Rec Center where we run our racquetball program, I told them there's no racquetball this week. And they go, the entire week? Like, yeah, the entire week. There's no racquetball. And they said, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I just want to take a week off. Some of the kids, some of the players, and some of the folks that work at the facility said, you won't make it a week. You won't make it a week. And a host of one of the shows that the Leon Thomas Group produces, his name is Michael Haney. His show, one of the shows we do with him is called Wake Up Baltimore. And we talk about all things positive, all things Baltimore. Mike, I've been trying to get him to come out and play racquetball. And he said he can make it Saturday. So I will be on the court Saturday at 11 o'clock. So if you're in the Baltimore area, anybody watching in Baltimore, why don't you come on by and join us for racquetball at the Northeast Regional Rec Center? So am I having withdrawals? Kinda, yes. Kinda, I am, yes.
I'm so worried that you're not going to make it to Saturday.
Wow, so that would mean tonight or tomorrow. And to find out about that racquetball program, go to racquetballrevival.com. Okay, enough about that. Miranda, tell us about tonight's guest. I'm really excited to meet him.
Okay, our guest is amazing. I have been so fortunate to have him as a guest in my classes for several years now. And I think I've shared this with him, but I'll share with our listeners. So he comes in to speak to my class about contemporary issues in hospitality management. And afterwards, I had students just bombard me asking me for his contact information because they were so impressed and just really wanted to reach out with follow-up questions. And I had a student say to me, you know what, when he walked in, I was upset because I thought it was going to be just another old white guy. And he blew my mind, not just another old white guy. So I'm so glad that he is taking the time to be here with us today.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and bring on our guest, Jay Litt. Hi, Jay. How you doing?
Just fine. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for being with us this evening. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Good to be alive.
Now, before we get into the real questioning, I read some things about you, and I hear that you play tennis, you're a tennis fan, that you like tennis, right?
Well, actually, I'm much better at racquetball. So I'll be in Baltimore this Sunday, and
Whoa,
love to meet up with you. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
this
No, tennis is my sport.
take him
Tennis,
out of the show. Get him out of here. Episode over.
listen, Tennis creates the first word in racket ball. Just remember,
Wow.
we use a racket. We don't use a racket ball in tennis. So you're just kind of like, next step from tennis. But that's okay.
Oh, wow. Man, it's getting rough already. We're only 5 minutes into the show. 30 seconds into the conversation, it's getting rough already.
Then they brought in pickleball, which is, what is that?
What is that?
Racquetball without a wall. Forget about it.
What is this pickleball stuff? Please get it out of here.
There you
Get
go.
it
You
outta
have some
here.
common ground to bond over.
Yes, we've got our bonding space already. Yes, just like that. And wouldn't it be great if in all conversations with everyone we meet that we could find that instant bond? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't the world be a much cooler place? What do you
It's
think?
called love.
Yes.
It's
yes.
true.
It's
Yeah.
just a matter. The other day I was traveling to Atlanta, and I tried an experiment because I was reading a book about love. And one of the things they said was, try smiling at people you don't know. And so I started doing that. And the people looked at me, they were looking at me with a sour look, and I smiled. And by God, they smiled back. So I just went through the whole day counting how many smiles I could create. And I lost count.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go.
Nice.
I
Very nice.
like it. I like it. I like it. Go ahead, Miranda. I'll
Thank
step
you.
back.
So I'm sure that many of our listeners are familiar with you and your awesome work that you've done throughout your very rich career. I'd love for you to, though, for anyone who's not familiar with some of the things that you've done, if you want to just tell us in a nutshell, who are you, what do you do, or what are you most proud of having done?
I got to show you this. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. That's part of my journey. That was the valedictorian graduation speech at Florida International University. First graduation 51 years ago. So my background is basically a person that comes from Queens, New York. I graduated with a degree in sociology and religion. I entered the U.S. Peace Corps, where I planted rice for 2.5 years in the jungles of Aklan, Kalibo, Panay Island, and started my career as a busboy dishwasher at the Fontainebleau Hotel. And during that time, I fell in love with the hospitality business. I'm sure we can get deeper into that and my insights into that. And I met up with a gentleman named Tony Marshall, who was the first, he's the assistant dean at FIU at a swimming pool in South Florida. He asked me what I was doing, and I said, you don't want to know, but what can you help me with? He said, how about a job? I said, good. I met Jerry Latin, first dean at FIU. There were no buildings at that time, just trailers. And he said, what kind of job do you want? I said, what can you offer? He said, how about a job in a hotel? You are in a hotel school trailer. Oh, I did. I had a night busboy job at the Fontainebleau, moved into a daytime job at the Fontainebleau in event management. And then he asked me if I wanted to go to school at FIU. And in 1972, I entered the very first program at La Primera Casa. It was the first building at FIU. And there were 13 professors. I already had a degree. I was able to graduate in 12 months with a degree in hospitality management. And Dean Latin actually single-handedly got me into the training program at Sheraton. And I went to a training program. I went to the maitre d' in Dallas, and from there to Puerto Rico, where I met my lovely wife, who I'm married to now for 49 years. And I renovated the Puerto Rico Sheraton. And I began a long career. I spent 12 years with them, general manager of the St. Regis in Manhattan, general manager of Sheraton Brickell Point. And then I went private for 7 years and bought hotels, sold hotels, had hotels in the South Beach, and then ended up at Brickell Point on Brickell Avenue with Interstate Hotels. And I spent about 12 years with them as a regional vice president. And they were bought and put together a 230,000 room consortium of hotels, of which I became the executive vice president of operations. We were bought by Blackstone, and I continued on and became a EVP of a startup, which was a asset management group and an ownership group of 7 hotels, and we grew to 36. And I renovated them all and left them and started a renovation company. and my lovely 37-year-old boy is working with me now. We have 18 projects going on, $80 million going on. And to give you an idea of where I am in my life, one of the senior executives at Marriott asked me yesterday, "Why aren't you retired?" And I said to them, "I am." And they said, "How can you be retired if you're working so hard?" I said, retirement is a fungible word. When you think of retirement, you think of golf, canasta, mahjong. When I think of retirement, I think of what do I want to do until I die that I like. That's what I'm doing. I like what I do. I love what I do. And I love teaching other people what I do. And that happens to be hospitality. It happens to be renovating hotels, talking about how to build hotels. It's my life. So I'm doing this 52 years. And if I live to 20 more, it'll be 72 years.
That's awesome. So you have arguably seen and done it all, everywhere.
Well, I've done only one thing in one area. I've been very careful never to stray off my path. And as I get older, my path becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And don't get me into psychic areas because I'll take the rest of the interview. I found myself at my age truly understanding who I am and what I want to do more than ever in my life. It slowed me down dramatically. Miyamoto Musashi in the Book of Five Rings is quoted as saying, "Really successful people are never busy." And I've slowed myself down to the point where I can see what I want to do. And I'm not pushed by anybody. We recently were asked by a major firm if we joined them. I said, "No, joint venture with you. But the only joining I have is with God. There's nothing else involved in my life. I am basically very level at this point."
I love that. Leon?
So Jay, you were in the 1973, the class of 1973 at Florida International University.
Yes.
And you started as a busboy, dishwasher, and basically you are what many would consider to be a hospitality success story. Look at everything you've done, where you started, and everything that you've accomplished in your career. It's kind of a two-part question. When you started working in hotels, was this the thing that you knew you would do for so long? Or was this I'll do it and see how it goes, and then maybe something else will come along better? So was this like the plan that this is what you were going to do, or did you have other things you were considering then?
It's a great question. I have always been pulled by the wind. I literally have never made a decision on my career. I simply followed the path that was being laid out in front of me. And at the time when I joined FIU, I was basically just getting great sun, having some fun with stewardesses, they were called then. And everybody was from Vietnam. It was wonderful. I had no plan. And this guy, Jay Litt, says, "Why don't you just go into a hotel?" When I got into the hotel, I went, wow, because I was a sociologist. And when I got to that first night as a busboy, and I was the only person there that spoke English, and I was surrounded by busboys and dishwashers, many of whom were doctors from Cuba. And the manager said, "You're the only guy that speaks English. You're in charge. Take over." And I asked people to do things, and the soda jerk, they called him the soda jerk that made soda, Manuel, said to me, "Jay, come here a second. You're not going to get what you want here unless you learn how to speak a little Spanish. Let me teach you one sentence. Hágame un favor. Hágame un favor." I said, "What's that?" "Do me a favor." I said, "Why should I do him a favor?" And he looked at me and he said, "You want to get it done?" And that was it. Wow. I fell in love with a group of people that weren't from my island. They weren't from my background. They were far more intelligent than me. But I suddenly realized there's something wrong here. These guys are lawyers and doctors. I'm like a piece of you-know-what, and I'm just learning now to be a busboy. That turned me on. The real shocker, was when I moved to daytime. And I got my first tip. Now, you might think of a tip as something you give a waiter. A tip is an English concept from the 1600s, it actually meant to ensure promptness, because in between rides on the carriages, you had half an hour to go to the bathroom and eat, and you gave a tip to ensure promptness before the meal, which is why we tip maitre d's. The day I got my first tip, I realized that I had in me to be servile. I had in me to be, I could crush my personality to get what I want done. And that changed my entire life. And I'll talk about how that changed my attitude towards DEI as well. But it changed my entire life because I realized I did not have to be a prince. I could be a pauper and act like a prince. And I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Speaking of DEI, so throughout your career, I know you mentioned that you found yourself early on in a position where you perhaps were the minority. How have you seen diversity, equity, and inclusion change in higher levels in our industry throughout your career, or have you seen it change?
Well, I'll give you a little backup. I went to a high school which was half African American and half white, and I was on the white side, as you can probably tell, and mostly Italian. When I left that environment, I went to college. It was severe racism. It was just horrible. I was at Bowling Green State University. There were probably 50 African American students. It wasn't a pleasant place. I went then to Parsons College in Fairfield, Iowa. And at that college, I read a book called Black Like Me. Blew my mind out of the water. And I took a look around and said, got some problems here. And I wrote a whole bunch of articles for the newspaper under a foreign name, explaining why cities were burning and what's going on. I was dating a girl from West Indies. I took her to a high school, a New Year's Eve party. She wasn't allowed in. I suddenly realized there's a lot going on here. And after that, I went to the Peace Corps and I went to the Philippines, and I didn't have a real touch of diversity until I went to FIU. FIU at that time was whatever it was. But my job when I got into the industry, and your question, Miranda, is over the years, have I seen a change? So let me tell you what I think, because you did ask me to come here anyway. So whether this is a popular thing I'm going to say or not, what I realized when I got into the hotel industry back in 1972, it's an industry of servility. It's an industry of servants. It's an industry based upon being a servant. And when I realized I was a good servant, I knew I could make a lot of money in this industry. But I had to be a servant while I was doing it. So my first 30, 40 years, I was basically a servant. Yes, sir, what do you want? I wasn't on the other side. And early on, when I was on the committee that helped stop the boycott in Miami back then, I was sent to 6 different high schools, Liberty City, Opelika, and I spoke to audiences of all Black students, juniors and seniors. And I was looking at them, and they were looking at me. I wasn't shocked. I was used to dealing with large groups of African Americans because of my background. But I sensed there was something wrong. And what was wrong was I was asking them to think about coming into the hotel business when their parents may have been in positions that they considered servants, maids, housemen, busmen. And it was a big leap for me to say to them, nah, don't worry about that. You're going to come in the hotel business and you're going to become a manager. Didn't work. Wasn't good. It was hard. And I think it's still sort of hard. But we're making, I see strides. I think DEI and the inclusion and diversity, just the awareness has been huge. My first job as a resident manager at the Sheraton Park Avenue, 1976-ish. Very luxurious hotel. I served under the first woman general manager in the history of the hotel business in a major hotel. Her name was Jetta Brenner. Yeah, her name was Jetta Brenner. And she brought me in and she asked me what I would think of being the resident manager to a woman general manager. I looked at her, I said, what a wild question. Well, what would be the big difference here? What's the difference? Jetta was more interested in the sheets at the time, or the Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I was more interested in how much money we're making and fighting the union. But it showed that at that point in 1996, there was one woman general manager in hospitality. And the second one came to Washington. I remember her as well. It was incredible. And, 50 years later or 40 years later, the first thing I did when I started talking about DEI was how do we get more women into positions of authority? Because they have an incredible ability to run a hotel. It's a different dimension. So there is a difference. I mean, you might have two highways next to each other. One is called a woman's highway and a men's highway. They manage differently. And they manage differently because of their abilities. And I think, interestingly enough, we're moving more towards the need for women's management abilities than men, because a lot of it's because of AI, and a lot of it's because a lot of the men things have been taken care of. Now we're talking about what is left, what is for the women's side of it, to make this a more holistic industry, a softer industry, an industry with less people that are managing. So there's a great opportunity in the future, as I said in your class a couple of times, Miranda, to go from event management to ownership management, to focus on getting women into positions where they are controlling the future of the industry more so than men. And at some point, those two pathways will cross. When is that? Probably won't see it me, but who knows? It's moving in that direction.
Awesome. That's wild. So what year did you say you worked for the first female general manager? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, 66.
Wow.
96, 96. I tell you, it's terrible. My mind is freaking out. No, it's actually about 76. Because 79, I became general manager of St. Regis. So it was 1976. And that was the first GM of a major corporate hotel.
Wow. That's wild. Go ahead, Leon.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Right?
Yeah. So, let me ask you this. So when you approached that group of African Americans and asking them to come to work in the hotel business, and you mentioned that their parents were maids and busboys and so forth. At that time, were there still some hotels that did not allow blacks to stay in those properties?
At that time, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you a quick story. I became the general manager of Sheraton Bal Harbor. That was 1983. Bal Harbor, Florida. You all know it?
I've been there.
Bal Harbor, Florida has a shopping center which is called the most expensive shopping center in the world. So the story is I get the general manager's job. It was a dream for me. I dreamt of this story, dreamt of this place. The big honor, #1 resort hotel for Sheraton worldwide. And we moved into the 8th floor, my wife and I, and my two dogs, Baron and Duffy. And we were dreaming, limousine, blah, blah, blah. And I started finding out stuff about Bal Harbor I didn't know. So have you ever heard of Arthur Linkletter?
Oh, yeah, Arthur Linkletter.
Yeah, he owned a hotel called the Ivanhoe. And there was a sign at his front desk that said, "No Jews, dogs, or the N-word." Right there, front desk.
Wow.
Bal Harbor. There were two sides of Bal Harbor. There was the condominiums on the ocean, and then there were homes next to the shops. You may not believe this, but in the deeds of the homes, it said no Jews could live there.
Really?
In the deeds. Yeah,
Wow.
Really. 83, in the deeds.
In
So one
83.
day, 83. So one day, my secretary comes in and goes, "Mr. Litt, there's a madman out here. He's all dressed in black." I said, "Well, send him in. I love madmen." In comes this madman. He was actually a Hasidic rabbi. He says, "My name is Shalom Lipskar. You're a Jew. I want your ballroom for a synagogue." I said, "You're crazy." He said, I have meetings going on and stuff. "Well, you remember who I am. You call me when you need me." I tell you right here. I'm telling you a story. That night, at 3 in the morning, I get a call. I live in the hotel. Security says, "You better come downstairs." We had a promenade with shops. The shoe shop got up and left, took all their stuff and left without paying the bill. I called Shlomo up. I said, "We have a place where your souls can come." Kind of funny, souls. I said, he said, "I'm going to have the first service Friday night." And he did the first service of the Shul of Bal Harbor in my shoe shop. My wife attended. We formed the committee. We built a Shul of Bal Harbor, which is the exact duplicate of the shul of Sophia Bulgaria, which was killed by the Nazis. And he opened a shul, which is right now a big, thriving shul in Surfside, next to Bal Harbour. He was the first resident of the homes of Bal Harbour. He forced his way in somehow. Now Bal Harbour is a semi-Orthodox community. So these things happen. But yeah, in 1983, absolutely. And it wasn't just that. It was, racism was alive and well in 83. And it was alive and well in hotels. There weren't hotels that said you couldn't come here. But if you went to big resorts, you didn't see a lot of African Americans. It just wasn't that way yet. And the hotel business, as you may or may not know, we have about 4 or 5 distinctive departments in our hotels. Housekeeping, food and beverage, engineering, blah, blah, blah. Each one is typically staffed by different groups of people. And always had been housekeeping was African American. Mm-hmm. And the restaurants became Latin. And the housekeeping changed. It went from African American to Latin, now it's Haitian. All these areas change as time goes by. But racism is not new. Racism is old. Always been there, always will. And it's just a matter of our working through it in hospitality. And I have some ideas about how that works in hospitality that we can discuss as well.
That was actually going to be my next question. You have seen monumental change. What do you think we need to do right now, today, to continue to push the needle?
Dignity. You need to give people dignity. It's great to say DEI, but that first word should say dignity. When you have a group of people, 35 women or men, who are attending to guest rooms, they're forced to wear a uniform, which immediately indicates that they are maid, even though we changed the name to room attendant. The question is, what can we do in our industry to give these people dignity and raise that job to the same job as a bank teller? It's not impossible, but it takes time. It means when I go to a hotel, I own hotels, and right now I'm renovating 20. I walk in there and I say, they say, what do you want to see, our guest rooms? No, I want to see your employee cafeteria. It will tell me who they are. It will tell me what their integrity is like. We have the right in our hotels to take positions which have been historically at the bottom of the rung. They're always going to be that way, but raise them up in dignity to where they are at the same level as a bank teller or a person that works at Saks Fifth Avenue. And how do you do that? Well, you first have to accept the fact that it's a problem. That's tough. If you can get someone to accept that, well, then you raise the level of the cafeteria. You change their uniforms so they're incredibly interesting and better. You make sure their locker rooms are who you are. I don't think you've been through many hotel locker rooms, but it's terrible. So if I am not forced, but if I get a job at the lowest pay possible, except maybe in New York City, but I'm at the low rung of the building, and I'm making up rooms. I'm cleaning up vomit. I'm cleaning bathrooms. And that night you go home. There's your family. Hi, Mom. How was your day? Well, how was your day, Mom? It wasn't spectacular. It was kind of shitty. It's a job. So how do you make that job better? Dignity. If you can give that job dignity through better uniforms, better locker rooms, better cafeterias, better information to them, make them part of the staff, not just part of the back of the house. Maybe we have a possibility in hospitality. And isn't it funny that the word hospitality is even used when we're in this situation? It should be de-hospitality. There's two sides of this. There's our guests and there's the people who serve the guests. Until we realize that the people that serve the guests have to be closer to the guest side, we're going to have non-diversity, non-inclusiveness. That makes sense?
That makes a ton of sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Leon, you look like you have thoughts.
Yeah. Jay, have you met Craig Poole? Are you familiar with him? Have you met him at all?
I think I know the name.
Craig Poole is the president of Reading Hospitality, They run a DoubleTree in Reading, Pennsylvania. And Craig Poole was the person that hired me for my first job in the hotel business. He hired me as a night auditor at the Hampton Inn Pittsburgh Airport.
I know.
And Craig has your thoughts on how to take care of your team members, your employees, whatever term we're using, mirror what you just talked about. And so my first experience as a line level employee was Craig, who has the same thoughts as you. And so when I worked with Craig, I thought that treating employees the way you just described was the way it's done. That was my first experience. I thought that's what it is, right? Then when I went to work with other managers and other companies and I saw different ways of handling things, I'm like, well, wait a minute, why are they doing it that way? And I would bring ideas and say, no, you're really supposed to do it like this. You're really supposed to do it like this. What Craig said is, boom, 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 you're supposed to do it this way. And people are looking at me like I was the knucklehead in how to take care of people. So I stayed in touch with Craig, and now he's managing the ownership group. He's in charge of the DoubleTree in Reading, Pennsylvania. And I was at his hotel last year. And I walked in the door, and I just looked around, and I went, I see Craig. I see dignity in the employees. I see the staff. And I started having conversations with them, and they were telling me how great it is to work there and to work for him.
Right.
And I hear him saying it, and I hear you saying it, and I don't hear many others saying, this is the way you're supposed to treat people.
No.
What do we got to do? Do we have to have a show every week to bring folks on like this? Tell me. Let's do something. Let's get this rolling. I loved what you said, Jay. I loved it. I love that you have that way of thinking about people. I just love it.
I'm taking over a hotel in Peachtree Corners, Atlanta. I'm going to renovate it. It's a Marriott, 222 rooms. And it's a significant deal. It's like $6 to $8 million. And I make a lot of money. I'm not going to lie. I like money, but I like doing what I do. And I went to that hotel, and the employees were amazing. I could feel their love. But you asked a very interesting question. And that question is almost a very deep understanding about why people buy hotels. So I'm going to tell you why people buy hotels. It's not because they like hotels. They like cash, C-A-S-H. 95% of the people that own hotels are not hotel business people. They're people that love cash. Hotels make cash. And to make the cash, guess what? You got to hold them for 5 years, 3 to 5 years. So think about this. Think if you're an employee in a hotel, and every 3 to 5 years, everyone you know goes away. All the management goes away, owners go away, and you're sitting there going, when do I go away? What kind of stability is that? That's number one. Number two, when you look at why hotels make money, there's two areas, food and beverage and rooms. How do we make the third category? You make money from your employees. How do you measure that? How do you measure whether a hotel gets return guests because of their employees? And what's that worth in money? I'm not saying I know how to do that. I'm saying it can be done if that's your plan. If your plan is to say, we have good employees, people are going to come back. It happens in restaurants. I love that restaurant, man. The waiters and waitresses are great. They say that. And all these airlines, all these people have these percentages of guest complaints and all that. But what do they do to their employees? Do they prove to the owners of these businesses that by having amazing employees, you have more business? They think by putting it in a swimming pool, they think by putting it in a restaurant, that's going to make guests come back. No. Guests come back because they're happy. I always ask people, especially what I do for a living, what are the top 3 reasons people go to a hotel? Miranda, can you tell me the top 3 reasons? You probably heard this in my speech 4 times.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm so on the spot now. I've never had more anxiety.
Okay, I'll take it.
And I'm glad he asked you first and not me.
I can give you my top reasons.
So the top reasons people go to hotels oh, they're beautiful, blah, blah, blah. The real census of why people go to hotels is cleanliness, location, and price. I want to add one more. I want to add humans. I want people to say, I want to go back to that hotel because the people in that hotel were amazing. That has a quality. You can actually monetize it. So if you monetize a level of 1 to 5, the 5th level of hospitality and create employees would be worth $20 a night. Huh? And you have a hotel that has 30,000 room nights, it's worth $600,000 to have great employees. If you could convince the industry that great employees monetized would bring people to your hotel, which brings people to your bottom line, then you begin to respect them employees. Then instead of being careful not to have dirty couches, you'd be careful not to have dirty uniforms. You would provide a position where people can be respectful. They can walk in and say, I'm a housekeeper, love this place, and I make the best beds in town. They don't say that from a servility. They say it from a pride standpoint. It's what I do. There's nothing wrong with being a housekeeper. No, it's like being a nurse or a nurse practitioner. Well, when I go into the hospital, it's like, are you a nurse? No, I'm a third nurse or a second nurse. I'm a house nurse. They're not upset or embarrassed about it. They're part of the staff. They're wearing a uniform that displays the fact that they're a professional. Can we make housekeepers professionals? Why not? Why can't we? Why can't we elevate them to the same level as any other employee? And more than that, I love the monetization side. If we could find some smart people in the hotel industry, they monetize occupancy, they monetize average rate, they amortize all sorts of things. They even try to amortize design. This hotel does better because of its design. If you have a hotel, sir, that is unbelievable with staff, you will make more money. You will have more returns. Monetize it, get it out in the open, start a flame in the hotel industry. Let employees make money for you. And you may be able to turn this crazy industry around. Because it's not getting easier. I've spoken to this point in Miranda's costs. You know, when I got in the hotel business, there were 35 managers in the hotel. Today there's 19. And I tell Dean Chang in San Michelangelo, hey, I don't want to sound apocalyptic or biblical, but the end is near. We're just going to not have a lot of managers. Wait a second, who's left? The employees, the staff. So we're getting rid of the managers, but you can't get rid of the housekeepers. You can't get rid of the busboys. So why not just monetize them, lift their level? So that, right now, there's a whole big thing I said in the Wall Street Journal last week. A lot of high school kids don't want to go to college. They don't want to go to college anymore because what's college? They want to become maybe a carpenter or a plumber, or they want to have a trade. Well, why wouldn't the hospitality trade be just as good as a carpenter? If that person is as valuable as a carpenter or an electrician or a plumber, housekeeper. Think about making the housekeeper at the same level as a plumber. She does 15 or he does 15 rooms a day. Those 15 rooms occupied at $100. They're taking care of $1,500 of cash a day, $9,000 of cash a week. The housekeeper is in charge of $9,000 of cash. If she leaves a dirty sheet, if she doesn't clean the room correctly, she inhibits that $9,000. We need to recognize that, recognize their value. So basically, recognizing the value of hospitality employees is key and critical to DEI. And I will tell you, from my perspective, disappointed in what DEI is, because it's becoming very structural. It's not attacking the sickness. It's not attacking directly at what's the problem. I'm talking about directly at what's the problem. I'm a solver. I'm not a process person. I don't like process people. When I started to feel DEI was becoming process oriented, starting to get very ephemeral, very interesting. I want to change things. I don't want to talk about it. I've been talking about it for 50 years. Come on, guys. You started a new program, DEI. It sounds like a Chinese restaurant. How about let's get dignity? How about that for a slogan? Let's bring dignity to our people. Let's not worry about DEI. Let's not worry about doctors and doctoresses and chairs of DEI. Let's solve the problem. This isn't that hard. This isn't rocket scientists. This is simple. But you got to get to the people that can change it. And those are the money changers, as Christ would say. Those are the people that are in charge. We need to go to the people that are in charge of companies and say to them, time to bring dignity to your staff. Those are the CEOs of major hotel companies. And they all have DEI divisions. Call the DEI and say, we want dignity for our housekeepers. How do we do that? I think that would make a change.
I think that's great. And I think the way that you frame it, by framing the job image of someone in housekeeping as saying, hey, each week you are responsible for $9,000 worth of revenue for this property. Like, you are important. Like, that's
Right.
how important you are. I think
Right.
that already improves the job image, right?
Yeah.
Already adds dignity to the job image.
Right. The front desk clerk checks him in, checks him out, never sees him again. The housekeeper sees him every day. The salesperson they see the wedding. They don't see the wedding people every day. You can change the life and stay of a guest by your attitude when you see them in the hallway. When they turn to say, hi, good morning, boom, immediately you go, wow. When they leave that toilet paper with a little elephant or a little rhinoceros or a little tissue coming out, you know they cared for you in some way. They're not asking for anything. I leave a tip. I throw dollars on the bed when I leave. Most people don't. How do you get? They're really struggling to have dignity. Mm-hmm. They can go home and look at their children and said, "I made the room. Mm-hmm. I did this really cute thing for the guest," but they don't know they're in charge of $9,000, and no one's told them that. Okay, New York City just raised that wage from $750. They're making $70,000 a year in New York. It's not so much the money. I swear to God, it can't be. These people I don't think they work for the money. I think they just desire a little bit of recognition. And some of the hotels do a good job. They have different days for different ethnicities, which is great. And complicating this is the ethnicity side, because typically housekeeping departments have different ethnicities, but in general, they either come from Haiti, Latin America, African America, or Islam. That's what we have right now. And there are 4 areas that you have to take care of. In a place like Minneapolis, which is probably 85-90% of the people are Somalian. What are they doing for that culture? What are they doing? I'm telling you, they're doing nothing. I'm renovating 10 hotels there. I see no evidence of their knowing they're from Somalia. We do a good job in some parts of this country with African American, with holidays that voice the African American holidays. We do things with Latins. I think these are all good. I think they're just kind of Band-Aids. I'm looking for a deep-seated difference of opinion at high levels of corporate life, where they recognize that their ground employees are the reason guests come to hotels, not because of design, not because of design. People come back because they were treated well. And that treatment begins at a line employee. When you realize that, it's not the front desk clerk, it's not the general manager, it's not the salesperson. It's the maid. Takes care of the room where you sleep. They make her stay. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I can think of several times that the housekeeping staff have been what made or broke my stay. I was in San Diego for a conference several years ago, staying there in the hotel by myself. And I had a terrible, terrible case of food poisoning or a stomach bug or something. And so I could not leave the room. And when the housekeeping staff came to clean the room, I said, "Oh, you don't want to be in here. I'm super, super sick." So they said, "Okay, well, here's some extra towels." And she left, and she came back 30 minutes later with a carton of soup. And I hadn't asked her for anything.
Boom.
But anytime I'm back in that area, that's where I'm going to stay.
Could you imagine if you had an entire hotel thinking that way?
Right?
Wow.
It's just like we were talking about with your gentleman in Reading. I was a general manager of I ran a company called Wyndham, and we were in Pittsburgh. We lived in Upper St. Clair,
Okay. I went to
Yeah,
college in Pittsburgh at Robert Morris.
there you go.
Yeah.
We were in Upper St. Clair, where my daughter, as a half Puerto Rican, was a star. What are you? Puerto Rican Jew? Really interesting. And she became a cheerleader at Upper St. Clair High School. I think there were like 12 black people in town at that point in time. And and Pittsburgh was a great place for a little diversity, right?
Hmm.
You had the
Absolutely.
Heights there. Anyway, I don't find this difficult to do, but after 52 years in the business, I find it somewhat boring that they haven't done it. And I'm not sure how we change it, because you have to change the raison d'être. You have to change the reason why people do business. You have to get them from saying we make business to make money, from saying we make business how we make money. We have to change the thinking that people come to hotels because of design, from people come to hotels because of the people that are in the hotel.
Hmm.
If we can do that, even 50% of it, it changes things. How do you do that? Well, you got to have one guy, two guys stand up. It's not Seta or Palua, or any of the CEOs, and believe this. All of these companies, I have been in major companies. I have been an EVP of the second largest company in the world. I ran a $3 billion company. I ain't never seen nothing of this. I've never seen any recognition that this is important. They hire people in positions that they used to call, well, it wasn't diversity. It was just the early positions of trying to show that they liked minorities. But those people didn't do anything to change it. They just made process, and they had meetings, and it was so cute to see. But now it's 30 years after, and we still don't have what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So I think it's doable. I think if we have chairs of diversity like we do at FIU, we have to change their focus from what they're doing to what they should be doing, I think. We have to be a little tough with the CEOs of these companies and explain that this country is over 50% minority. It's not going to get whiter. And we have to convince them in some way, shape, or form that the way to make money in their hotels is by having a dignified staff, period. If we do that, I think you'll see a change in their direction. And their direction change would be in creating programs that enforce uniforms, enforce locker rooms, but enforce the fact that their employees, if they are really great, will bring money to their properties.
Hopefully some of those decision makers are listening right now, and they're being inspired by your pearls of wisdom that you're just dropping everywhere.
Yes.
Leon, do I have time for my signature question? Or would
Yes,
you like to go first?
Let's see. Let's ask my signature question first, and then we'll go to yours.
Okay.
All right. So,
Ooh.
Jay, you had me thinking early on in the show when you said, I'm coming to Baltimore on Sunday, we're going to play racquetball, but that's not going to happen. So let's kind of talk about a Baltimore related question anyway. Have you ever had a Maryland crab cake?
I have.
Where did you have this Maryland crab cake?
I had a hotel in Baltimore.
Oh, you had a hotel in Baltimore. Where at?
The Hilton. I opened up a Don Shula's restaurant. It was a big Hilton on the way up on the top of the hill.
Yeah.
It didn't do real well, but it was a big Hilton. And I put 2 Don Shula's restaurants in there, and I absolutely stuffed myself with Baltimore crab cakes.
All right. So you've had crab cakes, Maryland crab cakes. So that means when you decide to come to Baltimore to play racquetball, I will treat you to a Maryland crab cake to eat here at the table, and I will give you some to take home as well. So thank you. I'm glad you had a Maryland crab cake. Here's how we got on that question. We were talking about crab cakes with a guest once, and they said they had a Maryland crab cake at a barbecue joint in Kansas City. I'm like, shut up. That's not a Maryland crab cake. Leave me alone. So now it's become a part of the show to ask about the Maryland crab.
And you passed. Check.
Yes, you're in.
I had another place. I'm trying to think of the hotel. It wasn't. What's the city? It's near Baltimore. Gosh,
Annapolis.
It wasn't Annapolis.
Towson.
It was like south of DC. It was the second airport down there.
Okay, so by
But
Dulles
anyway,
Airport.
Well, they had a lot of Maryland restaurants in it. I think it was outside of Baltimore. You know, I get confused over these years. I love Baltimore. I love the harbor.
Yeah.
You know, I was there, I think, a little earlier than even before they built the aquarium.
Mm-hmm.
And Baltimore, as you know, had some serious financial difficulties.
All right.
But it's coming back. The people are great. So I take you up on the crab cake.
All right.
I probably will hold off on the racquetball because I know you're bringing me on. There is no way. There is no way you guys help me. You're like a guy that walks up and goes, "You don't need money. Let me show you this trick." No, sir. No, sir. Give yourself away. You're a great racquetball player. However, I will say this. How about ping pong?
Oh, let's do it. Let's go.
Let me in.
Ping pong
go.
on. I played ping pong in Asia on an Asian team, touring team.
Oh,
They taught me to play Chinese ping pong with a racket like this.
yeah.
So I will meet you on the ping pong table, whereas afterwards we can celebrate with some cold beer and a crab cake.
I was about to say I can host the beer pong if you want to do that. So Jay, I want to wrap it up. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us this evening. I want to ask you what I ask all of our guests, and that is, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And it can only be one thing.
You're gonna make it.
Oh, I love that.
You're gonna make it. I can tell you, you hit the year. As you might have figured, I'm a '60s person. And I was a total mess in the '60s. But because of those things that made me a total mess, one day I was just standing in front of a mirror and I said, "You're going to make it." And that was it. And, you know, just to make FIU more important, the only other person in my life that ever said I was going to make it was Tony Marshall. And when I wrote my speech for the valedictorian speech, he made me say it in front of him 100 times. And I said to him, "Well, Tony, I don't know if I believe what's in this speech because it's very, geez, you're going to make it." And he says, "Jay, you're going to make it." And all through my career until he died, he was always there saying, "You're going to make it," until the point I believed it. So you're going to make it. If people believe you're going to make it, you cannot not make it. That's it. Just like when you go on the court, you know you're going to win.
I love that.
I love
that so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for involving me. I appreciate it.
All right. Let's bring Oren back. Hey, Oren, how's it going?
Doing well. What an amazing episode you all had this evening. I'll tell you something. Checking in is definitely where you want to tune in and get great information, great feedback that we always want to make sure that you can take with you and apply to life. Thank you for joining us here at Checking In, a Lodging DEI chat. I am your studio host, Oren Stewart. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.